You're listening to The Building Code. I'm Tom Houghton.
I'm Paul Worth.
We've got a great episode planned for you today where we're going to talk about hiring great people and retaining and engaging your top talent. This, of course, will help your business thrive, and we'll dive into that in just a second. But first, I want to tell you about an exciting opportunity we have called Buildertrend University on the Road. We're calling it BTU on the Road for short. This will be taking place in Dallas, Texas on October 3rd, 2019. It's a one-day event for you and your team to learn more and how to optimize your usage of Buildertrend. We have a limited time early bird discount available right now. So if you go to the website, buildertrendu.com/Dallas, you'll see the limited time pricing there. Depending on when you're listening to this episode, it might already be gone. So as soon as you listen to it, go check it out. So make sure you sign up for Buildertrend University if you want to continue to grow your business. Joining us on the Building Code today, we have our very own VP of Human Resources, Megan Maslanka, and our Director of Talent Acquisition, Makayla Hoover, joining us. Welcome to the podcast, Makayla and Megan.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're excited to talk about all things talent, people.
The world of people.
The world of people.
That's what we do.
It's a lot of fun.
A lot of people. 7 billion now, plus, and counting.
And counting.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah. Tom, explain why Megan and Makayla are here for our listeners, our wide array of listeners.
Well, as we've discussed many times on the podcast, Paul, we of course know there's an industry labor shortage happening
big time
in the construction industry. We of course hire a lot of people here at Buildertrend. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the number's definitely in the hundreds.
Yep. We've hired about 330 people. We will hire about 330 people this year.
330 people in 1 year.
How about those apples, Tom?
That's a lot of apples.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of headaches too for the HR team.
Fair amount of headaches, but that's okay.
Good things, bad things, but there's
Good
things
things.
that comes with a huge amount of employees.
More good things than bad things.
That's right.
That's the good news.
Maybe
Megan
people
can
didn't know
neither
that.
confirm nor deny the good or the bad.
Right.
Right.
I'm very neutral in all
Right.
topics.
And thankfully, we have a lot of good people. So most
A lot of good people.
Yeah.
You
A
know,
lot of good
you know what
people.
that rapper said? More employees, more problems.
I think that's what he said.
Who was that? I think it was Biggie, right?
Yeah.
Sounds right.
Sure.
We'll coin
Puff
Biggie
Daddy.
on that one.
Sure.
Check
P.
the
Diddy,
show notes.
I think it's
Check the show notes. We'll confirm
yeah.
the author of said phrase.
Yeah.
So people don't know that we have almost 500 employees here.
Over 500 employees.
Over 500 employees here in Omaha, Nebraska, HQ. One building.
Mm-hmm.
So
One building.
One roof.
it's a lot going on.
Roughly
And-
about 25 or 30 people new a month, which
Yes.
is impressive.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about how do you recruit people? What do you do during that phase? And how do you onboard people, those 25 to 30 we do a month? And then how do you handle HR related issues when you have a staff of more than one?
Specifically pertaining to engagement though too. Just making sure like getting great talent in the door is one thing, but making sure they're running on all cylinders is another.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like engagement is like a buzzword. What does that mean?
Great question.
That's a setup right there,
That's a-
Tom.
that's
It's
a
an
nice
Set up for Megan. Megan's going to knock it out of the park.
It's an industry term.
It's
Here
an
we go,
industry
Megan.
term. Yeah, it's definitely overused. So we actually try to think about it in terms of employee experience and then eliminating what tends to lead to job misery. So things like when people don't know what the expectations are for them, when they don't have meaningful connections, and they feel like their work doesn't matter. That's really what we're trying to avoid. But yes, engagement's a fluffy term. It's definitely overused, and it's a lovely HR buzzword.
You know another term is overused is culture.
Culture.
People talk about culture a lot. What's culture?
So how we define culture here, or how we think about culture, is more like the essence of what makes BT great. It's how we grew over the last 13 years. It's our hard work. It's our people. Culture in lots of organizations means things like the perks, the cafe, the fun events. And that's all a facade for what really matters. What we try to do is help employees, especially in the onboarding phase, understand the essence of BT. And we can do that by making meaningful connections with peers, because peers are the best ones to story tell about how hard we work and how passionate we are about our success and our customer success. And it would be one thing coming from HR if I were to like preach that to people, but it's better coming from their peers. So we focus on that relationship.
That's awesome.
So if I'm a listener to this podcast and I own my own business as construction, culture is important so I can hire people, I can attract people because we have a good culture, and we keep people. Those are two difficult things, right? So I'm not clear. Can I have a ping pong table or not? at my office?
Great question.
Why not?
Why not?
As long as your people are still working hard, still getting their work done,
Right.
let them go play ping pong.
As long as it's not just a ping pong table.
Exactly.
And you
It's more
think
than
that's cool culture.
Yeah.
You got to have some meat behind it.
If you have a ping pong table and no one can use it, and then you don't use it together, someone's just like playing ping pong by themselves, you can't do that.
That's
unless you
a-
flip it
There's
out.
like a robot now.
It's a robot.
Lonely,
Yeah.
It's a
It's a
lonely
lonely
scene.
place.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Jeez.
I was going to say most of our clients listening obviously are not going to have 500 employees. So, tailoring this to a smaller, medium-sized business is important. That's one of the things we want to focus on our discussion today. But I would say the stakes are even higher for those businesses, right? Because obviously with 500 people, we've got a large army of people working for us. When you've got a smaller team,
a lot to lose.
yeah. Let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about mission statements for companies. Why do you guys think it's so important for companies to have mission statements?
I think not even just the mission statement, even going back to what is the essence of BT or the soul of BT, like what makes BT special or Buildertrend special is the thing you have to define early on. You also have to define those characteristics you look for. But when you don't have those aspects defined, you don't know why you're bringing in a ping pong table. You don't know what you're trying to do through all other aspects of their employee life cycle. It's all inauthentic if you don't have that defined.
Good.
Is a mission statement and company values something that you develop so you can tell prospects that stuff?
I think
Or is
so.
it more internal?
I think it's both. I think that your mission statement, your company values can bring talent your way if they think that they can align with those company values, then they can get on board with your mission statement. And it also really kind of, I guess, puts everybody on the same page and sets everybody up for success. There's those boundaries there. And so ultimately everybody knows the common goal.
One of the things we focus a ton on is making sure what we sell someone, because recruiting and attraction is just as much a sales process, what we tell them in that process matches with their experience. And if you don't have it defined on the backside of what you actually care about, then you're easily susceptible to selling something that is not going to be the experience, which leads to that disconnect and ultimately turnover.
That's good. So any ideas or like starting points for people who are maybe haven't defined their mission or their company values, as Paul put out? What would be some good first steps for them?
So I think with a mission statement and defining it, you ultimately obviously have to look at your company. You can't look at other companies and compare yourselves to them, because at the end of the day, if your mission statement isn't really honing in on what your company does, then it's not going to make sense. So look at your company, just decide what it is you want to preach. You want to be very brief and specific. If your company isn't using like fancy jargon words, then don't put some crazy word in there that maybe people don't even understand. Make sure it's really brief and really defined so that people can really kind of get behind it and believe in it.
I think too, you can always look at the owner or the original few people who started the organization and understand if you're, let's say, 5 years into your company and you don't have them and you're looking to start them, to Makayla's point, look back at those first few years and what made you thrive as an organization or what got you through those years, because that can help give direction to what you're really trying to do, what you really value as an organization.
Awesome. So step one, define kind of who you are, so that way not only your clients would know, but also anybody who you're looking to hire would also know,
Yep.
right? Then that moves on to step two, which is we got to get them in the door, right? We got to hire some people
Yep.
so that we can grow.
Yep.
So let's talk about maybe some tips that you might have for that, Makayla.
Sure.
Would be like a candidate profile template or something like
Yeah,
that?
yep, absolutely. So a candidate profile, it may be something that people already use out there. One reason why it's really important is, you can have the job description, you can have the qualifications listed out on paper, but if you only have that, that's only going to get you so far. You need to ultimately define and understand what you are looking for in that candidate. What are their intangibles? What takes them off paper? Are they going to be a culture fit for you? So once you have that candidate profile defined, then you can go and start looking for the people that you're looking to fill for the role. That's ultimately going to be the most important thing, because you're not going to find the right fit if you don't know who you're looking for.
I'm going to give you hardball journalism here.
All right.
Help me define intangibles, because isn't that the very definition of an intangible, is that you can't really grasp it? So
Yes.
can you give me an example of what that would be?
For example, it would be like a great communication, or maybe work ethic, something like that. A lot of things you just can't. You can teach a lot of things, but others you can't. So if somebody comes in and you're looking to hire somebody for a sales job and they don't have the communication or the hard work ethic, probably not going to be a good fit for sales.
Sure. Can you give any quick tips to how to kind of like suss that out in that interview process?
Sure. So, and this would probably go into maybe some more of the interview sort of questions that you would define.
Sure.
And one way that we have determined that we can kind of really weed out some of our great sales candidates versus maybe not the great ones, is ask very open-ended questions, ask specific questions, ask situational questions. So, how do you combat rejection? What would you do if you were rejected X amount of times? If you were put in a situation ever where you maybe failed, how did you come back? Ask those sorts of open-ended questions to see if that candidate is going to be the one to be able to bring it back.
Awesome. I'm sure you probably have a whole bunch of examples of those. Maybe we'll put a few of them in the show notes for people to check out.
Sure. That sounds good. I'm always for show notes.
Big show notes guy.
Big show notes guy. Do you recommend job shadowing?
Absolutely. Yep. So that's part of our process. Kind of, it starts with a phone screen, get to know the candidate. Ultimately, you really kind of want to humanize it. Typically, if you're in an interview and the candidate's probably going to have quite a bit of nerves. So humanize it with the candidate. Make sure that you really lay out the entire job details of the role. After that, if all's going well, suggest setting up an on-site interview, and after that, job shadow. Absolutely. That's something that we've incorporated to our process all throughout the organization. Ultimately, we want to set people up for success and want to make sure that everything is completely laid out before anybody accepts a job.
Yeah, for a lot of our listeners in small businesses, like if they have 3 to 5 employees, like you're basically having somebody join your family.
Right.
So it'd be good to know if they get along before.
Right. That they're not crazy.
Take them to a job site. Have them
Take
do
them
a
to a
ride-along.
job site. Yeah. Do a ride along.
Now, I mean, do we feel like this job shadowing thing, do we feel like that's pretty prevalent, or do we feel like this is like a new thing?
It's probably, as far as Buildertrend goes, we've been doing it for about 3 years now, and it's been something that we've adopted into our process consistently, and it's proven to be really successful. We've had really great feedback from candidates, so it ultimately gives them a day-to-day in the life of a day-to-day, and I think that's what candidates are looking for when they're looking for a job.
I think too, with the fact that the unemployment rate in the construction industry is 4.7, 4.9%, depending on the month. It's just as much your job to sell the candidate and taking them out. For a lot of our customers, they've got really cool job sites. And to see how all of it works and the role that they will play is a big part in us selling them. And that's what we're trying to do too. We're trying to get our candidates to interact with different members of the team, to see the floor in action, to see what their life would look like here, because we're trying to sell them almost more so than they're trying to sell us. Like it's a different model than it was 10 years ago when unemployment was really high and we had our pick of candidates.
Sure.
So I think that's a big part of it too. It gets them to see what life is like, and it's a really cool job site.
Now, again, to give somebody who's never dealt with job shadowing before, is this like an all-day thing? Do people like want compensation for their time usually, or how does that work?
I know on the compensation, I think if the candidate is really invested in thinking that this is going to be a good fit for them, ultimately you would hope that they would take the time out of their day to see if it's the right fit for them. As far as the timing goes, I think if it is some sort of a job site, I would say at least half a day, maybe a full day. It ultimately depends on the job.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to do what works best for them. I wouldn't recommend stretching it all day. That might be a little bit taxing for someone, but it should be meaningful where you're not just showing them some 10-minute view of it and they can't really grasp more of it, more of the experience. So everyone should kind of pick what works for them. Ours usually go from 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the role, depending on the team and what else we have paired, but I wouldn't recommend a full day, that's for sure.
Great.
Let's talk about onboarding. So we've interviewed, we've hired this person. I would say I've seen a lot of small businesses, because they're so busy and spread thin, just kind of throw people in the water and say, figure it out. That's probably not a good strategy, right?
No,
because we spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort hiring people, and if they just leave 30 days later, that's just a net loss. So what are some good strategies on onboarding?
Yeah, we focus a lot on first impressions. So that first entire day into day 45, day 60 is important for us. We want them to get assimilated to the organization in different ways. So for customers, it's a very similar approach. They should learn a little bit about the organization and the whole company big picture. They should learn about their team. They should learn about their role specifically. And in all of those steps, it's a little bit about the culture or the aspect and making sure they're learning that essence of VT. So we do some fun things. We keep it lighter weight. Makayla's got a team, does a great job very early in the process, starting to onboard them so that once they accept the offer too, it's not a silent period for 2 to 3 weeks or even a month where they get no interaction from us. But it's all about first impressions, making sure we've got a fun, engaging atmosphere, lots of different activities. We're not leaving them at their desk unattended to for multiple hours to figure it out, to your point.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Yeah, I think one of the great things that we do here is, I think maybe in the first week, maybe you guys will have to talk about the timing of it. We do an event called Meet the Managers. Do you guys want to tell everybody a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we started doing Meet the Managers probably about 2 years ago. And what that means for us is essentially all of our new hires get in front of the entire leadership team. And for our new hires, that is something that's a really cool experience. Our leadership team is about 15 people. And depending on the class or the month, we could have about 25 people starting in 1 month. So we typically do them, our Meet the Managers meeting about once a month, and we all get in a big room. It's a really casual setting, and essentially just go around the room and get to know each other. So our VPs, our directors, all the leadership team meet with the new hires, and it's not just, hey, what do you do here? What's your job? How long have you been here? It's, hey, I have a dog and his name is Bob, or I like to go ice skating on the weekends, whatever it might be. You kind of get to know the new hires along with the leadership team. So it's a good way to break the ice. And then ultimately, if you're walking around the hallway, it's a good way to say, hey, I know you. I met you yesterday, whatever it might be.
Tell me more about that dog named Bob.
Bob.
Bob's
Great guy.
Bob.
Interesting choice.
Yeah, that was a weird one.
We got Tom cracking up over here. Who knew dog jokes were their way into your heart, Tom?
It's true.
First of all, I think that's one of the great things we do. I mean, if you don't know your owners, you're not going to work hard for them, right? Or if you don't know what they're about. So that's really good for people listening. So we've defined our mission statement, company values. Great. We got a candidate profile. We went out there. We hired people with some great tips and tricks. We've onboarded them. Now, what if they suck? What happens? What do we do?
Oh, that's on the manager. No, just
Nope.
kidding.
You guys are out?
I'm out.
No. Let's look at both sides of the coin. So let's say they're amazing. How do we give them consistent feedback that makes them feel valued? Let's say that they weren't what we thought they were, and we need to either terminate them or we need to have a performance review.
Yeah.
What are some best practices there?
Yeah. So one of the interesting thoughts that a lot of times we have is that our top performers, we don't have to give feedback to. So even if you have someone who's doing really well and, you would consider them the classic term of the rock star or the superstar, they probably need feedback and not just praise, but things they can keep doing to get better, to keeping that top performer for you. More consistently than someone who's not performing. But on the side when an employee or one of your workers is not doing well and you need to give them that constructive feedback, I always suggest, obviously addressing it early and often is the most simple thing you can do. But it's about meeting that the performance issues with the right level of seriousness. Sometimes we get nervous as leaders and owners and managers and start to maybe make light of the situation because we don't want to address it. And so we try to joke about it, or we offhand make a comment about, that wasn't that important. But the best thing you can do for those employees that are not performing is to give them serious feedback, meet it with that level of appropriateness that needs to address it. And we do a couple different things. We give employees a couple opportunities. Obviously, we want everyone to be successful. So we'll give them frequent coaching. We meet with them weekly, bi-weekly, tell them what's going well, where they can improve, just pretty simple feedback. If it doesn't end up working out and they're still not performing, we usually go down the performance improvement plan. Now, for our customers who maybe have 5, 10, 15 employees, it can be as simple as saying like, okay, over the course of the next 30 days, we've got to get your performance. You can't have any errors if someone's constantly making those mistakes because it's impacting your business, or you should tell them why that's not okay. Sometimes we think employees understand. And then you can meet that early on too with saying like, if we can't correct this in 30 days, unfortunately, we're going to have to part ways. Giving that early notice to employees too is a good way to help them understand how serious you are about it. And unfortunately, if it doesn't work out, you go through termination. You obviously have to know your local and state laws around if you're an at-will state and you can terminate on the spot without cause, or if you need proper documentation.
So communication's good on either side of that coin. Communicate when they're good, communicate when they have places to improve. Also document, right? Because there's some liability there if you terminate an employee.
For sure.
One point to bring up too is the talent team tries to assess talent all throughout the process, and maybe they're interviewing for a particular job, and we onboard them and we hire them, and maybe they're a great person, it's a great employee, but maybe they're just not the right fit and we didn't screen them the right way. When we have 550 employees and we're hiring 330 in a year, we're not going to get it all perfect. So we always, too, try to move those employees around if maybe they're not in the right job. Maybe some career advancement opportunities can exist in the organization too.
Oftentimes you would be surprised too that employees know when they're not performing. And if you get into a situation where you may be selected an individual to join your team and they're not working out, chances are you could have that conversation of like, this isn't a good fit, we should part ways, and it'll be more of a mutual decision. It's still a hard life event for any employee to hear those words, but it's better to do that early. For when you have 5 employees, one person not pulling their weight is super critical. So our advice is, don't let it lag, don't not address it, and just the sooner the better.
Sure, definitely. We were talking a lot about communication.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of piggyback off of that. What does that communication look like from leadership? How do you think leadership should be communicating with the team?
So one of the things when you have a small team, your employees are likely wanting to understand, are you doing well as an organization? A lot of contractors are constantly thinking about how to grow their business, how to add more job sites. We don't recommend, it's up to each individual owner of what they feel comfortable sharing and communicating from a company aspect. But we do recommend sharing things like, we're hoping to grow our company by 5 job sites in 2020, or double the size of our network, whatever that looks like for each organization, because your employees understand how their work matters, what they're working for. That's the way we like to communicate about success here too, is in the growth terms and percentage growth or number of job sites versus any other type of revenue, because we also know in small organizations, there's a lot of cash flow conversations. It's hard to pin down a certain number at a certain date. And so you don't want to hold yourself necessarily to that, but talk in big terms and big pictures to help your employees understand, like, okay, I'm being added to the team because I can help us grow 5 job sites. So every day matters, and they'll feel that.
I think something that's been really important and beneficial to the growth of Buildertrend as we've grown with communication is having a consistent cadence of, knowing when your manager is going to meet with you and knowing that it's going to be at this time or at this day each. So really designate time with your employees to know that, show them that you care, show them that they matter, and have one-on-one meetings with your employees too. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wanted to circle back. So construction is having a hard time recruiting, especially young people or anybody really. What are some ideas for a small business owner to attract more people to their company? And what I mean by that is like signing bonus or more PTO, like what things resonate with, let's just call it the younger generation now.
I think it obviously depends on the market that you're in and where you are, what type of talent that you really are trying to attract. But ultimately, depending on the size of the company too, what sorts of benefits are going to be viable for your company. I do think that in the younger generation, more time off is something that's really hot right now, or just a flexible work schedule in general. So whatever it needs to be, and depending on the candidate that you're trying to attract, do some research, see what's out there, and really try to increase your benefits.
One of the interesting things too is a lot of times we focus on what can we offer new. And what we're trying to do is say holistically, how do we help personalize benefits? So if you have 5 employees, one may want more PTO, one may want maybe a better premium for their medical expenses because they've got a family. So one of the interesting things that's actually happening is you could offer different things to different people of the same dollar amount. So if you can spend $500 per employee more, and maybe that's the equivalent of 1 or 2 extra PTO days, and you can transfer that $500 into a premium of a benefit, you could go down that route. Your employees actually know that you're attempting to care for them personally versus a mass. Because to Paul's question, I don't think there's a one size model that will fit a generation.
Sure. I feel like that might add a lot of headache on your team, maybe.
Yes, at Buildertrend with 550 employees, it's going to be interesting. But again, it goes back to what can you do? And the cost of retaining employees is easier, especially in the labor market, than losing. So if we instead could spend a certain amount to try to retain talent is actually more beneficial for us than losing that individual, having a loss of productivity, especially for a small organization, that's crucial. And then there's a cost to hire on top of that. So we think about our holistic package that way versus just there's hiring costs and then there's benefits cost. Can we transfer some of that spend?
That's smart. You guys got a good system down there.
We're trying.
Yeah.
We got a crack team there in HR and recruiting. Yeah. It's great.
Whip.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, this has been extremely informative. I feel like I'm ready to go start hiring and engaging people left, right, and center.
Just keep the engaging to a minimum.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you both for joining us so much on the podcast today and sharing your wisdom. And we will definitely boil all that all down into the show notes. So make sure you check that out. And I think we could probably bring you guys back for more because I feel like there's definitely more that they were hiding from us.
Anytime.
We'd love that.
They're hiding?
Yeah, they were like, hiding it
Withholding.
back.
They were hoping to get a second spot. Makes
Sure.
sense.
Yeah,
All right,
this
round
is-
2.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Round
This
two.
is the
You
plan.
can't have it all.
That's right.
Let's go.
Great job, Tom. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Makayla.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you.
Love what you heard? Don't forget to rate and subscribe to our podcast so you can hear from more guests that will benefit your business. Also, please check out our show notes page for more information on what we discussed on this episode. You can find it at buildertrend.com/podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Building Code.
Appreciate you.